My name is Maya. I'm 31, the daughter who learned to disappear. Thanksgiving smelled like roasted turkey and my mother's perfume. My mom, Patricia, stood at the head of the table, glass raised toward my older brother, Jason. He just made partner at his firm, she announced, eyes shining. Then she turned to me. Still working at that little nonprofit? When will you do something that matters? Jason smirked over his wine glass. Some of us have ambition, Maya. The table went quiet, waiting for my usual apologetic smile. I set down my fork slowly. I do, I said. I just stopped performing it for people who wouldn't notice anyway. And in my bag, 3 signed contracts waited to prove it. Before we go on, where are you watching from today? Your childhood bedroom, a coffee shop, or somewhere you finally feel safe? Scarlett Johansson is here with you. The story didn't start at Thanksgiving. It started in a quiet Denver suburb, where my mother built a shrine to my brother before I could walk. Jason is 6 years older. He was athletic, loud, the kind of kid who made parents beam just by existing. My dad, Michael, traveled constantly for work, so Mom ran the emotional household like a kingdom, and Jason was her crown prince. When Jason scored the winning goal at his high school championship, Mom threw a party that lasted 3 days. Banners hung from every window. She invited the entire neighborhood. A local newspaper came to photograph him. Mom framed that article and hung it in the entryway where everyone could see it. That same year, I won a regional science fair with a project on renewable energy that got noticed by a state university. I brought home a medal and a letter of commendation. Mom glanced at it while loading the dishwasher. "That's nice, sweetie," she said. Then she looked past me at Jason's new trophy shelf. "Your brother is so driven. You should learn from him." It became a pattern I couldn't escape. At 12, I begged to go to summer camp. I'd saved birthday money for months. Mom came into my room the night before registration closed. "We can't afford it," she said. But 3 weeks later, Jason got a brand new laptop for a computer class he wanted to take. When I asked why, she didn't even look up. "Your brother's education is an investment, Maya. You'll understand when you're older." At 14, I had my first art show at a local gallery. A teacher had submitted my paintings, and they'd been accepted. I was terrified and excited. I asked Mom to come to the opening. She promised she would. The night arrived, and I stood in that small gallery, checking the door every 5 minutes. She never came. When I got home, she was watching Jason's basketball game on a recording. "He needed me there to film it," she explained. "Your brother's games are important for his college applications. Your art can wait." At family gatherings, I learned to make myself small. I'd fill my plate and find a corner. Adults would cluster around Jason, asking about his plans, his achievements, his opinions. I'd sit there, invisible, practicing smiles that didn't reach my eyes. Only my aunt, Diane, seemed to see through it. She'd find me after these gatherings, usually outside on the porch steps. She'd sit beside me and say quietly, "One day you're going to be so far ahead of everyone here, and they won't even know how it happened." I wanted to believe her, but belief takes energy. And I was running on empty. By college, favoritism wasn't a feeling anymore. It was financial policy carved into every decision. Jason got his entire undergraduate paid for. Tuition, housing, meal plans, a car, spending money. No questions asked, no loans, no guilt. When I got accepted to a good state school, I asked Dad about help with tuition. He was packing for another business trip. "We covered your brother's education, Maya," he said, avoiding my eyes. "We don't have that kind of money twice. Maybe look into scholarships or loans." He left the room before I could respond. So I did. I filled out every scholarship application I could find. I worked 2 jobs, one at a campus bookstore and another at a coffee shop on weekends. I lived in the cheapest dorm, ate ramen more nights than not, and studied in the library until they kicked me out at midnight. I graduated with a degree in nonprofit management and a minor in business. I'd done it debt-free through sheer force of will. Mom sent me a text on graduation day. "Congrats, Maya. Jason's busy with his bar exam prep. Can't make it today. No ceremony attendance. No dinner. No hug. Just a text with a typo in my name she never corrected." That absence taught me something crucial. If I waited for their pride, I'd wait forever. I moved to Portland for a job at a small environmental nonprofit. The pay was terrible, but the mission mattered. I lived in a studio apartment with bad heating and a shower that only worked at certain angles. I took every project they'd give me: grant writing, community outreach, donor relations, volunteer coordination. I learned everything at once, because I had to. After midnight, I'd sit at my tiny desk and teach myself fundraising databases, donor psychology, campaign strategy. I tracked every dollar I earned and every dollar I saved in spreadsheets I updated weekly like a heartbeat. Mom called every Sunday, but Jason was always the headline. When I tried to share updates about my work, she'd listen for exactly 30 seconds before pivoting. That's nice. But did you hear Jason made partner? He's the youngest in his firm's history. Her voice would fill with warmth that never touched my name. I stopped offering details after a few months. What was the point? 4 years before this Thanksgiving, I caught my first real break. I'd written a grant proposal that brought in $800,000 to my organization. It was the largest single grant we'd ever received. My executive director called it transformative. She promoted me to senior program manager with a significant raise. I was 27 and finally felt like I was building something real. Mom insisted I come home for Easter that year, so I drove the 10 hours back to Denver. At dinner, I mentioned the grant and the promotion. Aunt Diane lit up, asking questions, genuinely interested. Then Mom turned to Jason, who was sitting there checking his phone. "Tell everyone about your new condo," she said, voice bright with pride. "Downtown Denver, floor-to-ceiling windows," he said, not looking up. Mom beamed like he'd just won the Nobel Prize. I sat there, fork frozen in midair, my accomplishment evaporating into the air. Later, Mom's friend Ellen cornered me by the dessert table. She touched my arm with false concern. "You know, men don't like women who are too focused on work," she said, smiling that passive-aggressive smile I knew too well. "Your brother has such a nice balance. Career and social life. You should think about that." I nodded because arguing never changed my role in this family. I was the supporting character in Jason's story, and everyone knew it. On the drive back to Portland, something inside me shifted. It wasn't anger exactly. It was clarity, cold and sharp as January air. I stopped giving them ammunition. I stopped sharing my wins, my projects, my life. I doubled down at work instead. I took on larger campaigns. I learned major donor cultivation. I started freelance consulting for other nonprofits on weekends. Within a year, I had 3 steady consulting clients paying me monthly retainers. I automated my savings. 20% of every paycheck went straight into index funds I never touched. I lived like I was still broke while my accounts grew quietly in the background. Meanwhile, Jason kept changing jobs, firm to firm, always chasing the next title, the next salary bump. And when things got tight, when his condo fees piled up or his car lease needed covering, he called Mom. She'd sigh and complain to Dad, but she always paid, always rescued him. I watched the pattern repeat without ever volunteering to be part of it. By the time Thanksgiving rolled around, I had proof nobody expected. If this were your family, what would you do? Comment 1 to keep the peace and stay invisible. Comment 2 to speak up and set boundaries. 3 weeks before Thanksgiving, Mom called with big news. "Jason's getting married," she said, voice trembling with excitement, "to a lawyer from his firm. The wedding will be next summer. We're having an engagement party next month." I should have been happy for him. Maybe part of me was. But mostly I was tired. Tired of being the footnote in every family announcement. That exhaustion turned into something useful. It turned into motion. I'd been working on something quietly for 18 months. 3 other women from my graduate program had reached out about starting a consulting firm together. We all specialized in different areas of nonprofit strategy. Together, we could offer comprehensive services. We'd been meeting over video calls, building a business plan, securing our first clients. We called it Catalyst Collective. By October, we had 6 retainer clients and a waiting list. We'd just signed a contract with a national foundation to redesign their entire grants program. 6 figures, renewable annually. I was now pulling in more annually than Jason made as a partner. And I had equity in something I'd built. But nobody in my family knew. Not because I was hiding it, because they'd stopped asking years ago. At Jason's engagement party, I stood in my parents' backyard watching Mom show off her son. Tables draped in white, string lights hung between trees. A cake that read, "Congratulations, Jason and Miranda." Mom moved through the crowd like she was hosting the Oscars. Jason stood in the center with his fiancée, accepting congratulations like a king holding court. I stayed near the drink table with Aunt Diane, making small talk. A cousin I barely knew asked what I was up to these days. "Still at that charity thing?" she asked, sipping champagne. I nodded. "Something like that." She made a sympathetic face. "Well, at least you're doing something you enjoy. Not everyone needs to be successful like Jason." The comment landed like a slap, but I smiled through it. Aunt Diane squeezed my hand under the table. Later, I went inside to refill the ice bucket. The house smelled like the apple cinnamon candles Mom always burned. I heard voices coming from Dad's office down the hall. The door was cracked open. I stopped, something in Mom's tone making me pause. I shouldn't have listened. But I did. Jason sat in Dad's desk chair, paperwork spread out in front of him. Mom and Dad stood over him, both looking stressed. The numbers on the page looked like a budget spreadsheet. "The wedding's expensive," Jason said, rubbing his face. "Miranda's parents want a destination thing. Hawaii. Her family's huge. Mine too. It's adding up faster than we thought. How much are we talking?" Dad asked quietly. "Probably 70,000, Jason said. "Maybe more with flights and the rehearsal dinner." Mom made a soft noise of distress. "We don't have 70,000 sitting around," she said. "I know," Jason said. "But I can't look cheap in front of her family. Her dad's a federal judge. I need this wedding to be right." There was a long pause. Then Mom said what she always said. "We can take it from the retirement fund." Again, Dad started to protest, but she cut him off. "He's our son, Michael. This is his wedding. We'll make it work." I felt my stomach drop. This was the same woman who'd told me at 18 that we couldn't afford $400 for summer camp. The same woman who'd made me take out loans for textbooks while Jason got a car. I stepped back before they could see me. I walked outside and got in my car. I drove back to my hotel and sat in the parking lot for an hour, staring at nothing. That night, I opened my laptop and looked at my accounts. Savings, index funds, business equity, consulting income. I looked at the foundation contract we'd just signed. I looked at the business plan we'd built for year 2 expansion. I stared at the numbers until one truth became undeniable. This wasn't hope anymore. It was fact. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need their support. I'd already built something they couldn't see because they'd never looked. Thanksgiving arrived like a storm I'd been tracking for weeks. Mom had insisted on hosting at her house this year, even though Jason and Miranda offered. The table was set for 20 people. Extended family, family friends, Miranda's parents. Mom had gone all out. China plates, crystal glasses, centerpieces that probably cost more than my first month's rent in Portland. I arrived alone, carrying a bottle of wine I'd been told to bring. Jason and Miranda sat at the head of the table like royalty. Mom fluttered around them, making sure everyone knew about the Hawaii wedding, the honeymoon in Bali, the condo they were buying in a new development. I sat between Aunt Diane and a family friend I'd met twice. I answered polite questions with vague answers. Work was good. Portland was nice. No, I wasn't seeing anyone. Yes, I was happy. All lies delivered with a smile. Dinner arrived in waves. Turkey, stuffing, 3 kinds of potatoes, vegetables I knew Mom had stressed over for days. Conversation flowed around me like water around a stone. I was there, but I wasn't really present. I'd perfected the art of invisible participation. Then Mom stood, glass raised, eyes already wet with emotion. She waited for silence. "I want to make a toast," she said. "To my son, Jason." She looked at him like he'd hung the moon. "You've worked so hard to get where you are. Partner at 37. A beautiful fiancé. A wedding we're all so excited about." She paused for effect, letting the pride settle over the table like a blanket. "This is what success looks like. This is what happens when you chase your dreams with everything you have." The table murmured agreement. Glasses clinked. Jason smiled, that confident smile he'd perfected over 37 years. Then Mom's eyes landed on me. She didn't lower her glass. She just shifted her attention like a spotlight changing targets. "And Maya," she said, voice shifting to something that sounded like concern but felt like judgment. "Still working at that little nonprofit in Portland?" The table went quiet. I felt every eye turn toward me. "When are you going to do something that matters?" she asked. The words hung in the air, sharp and clean. Jason leaned back in his chair, smirking. "Some of us have ambition," he added. "You can't save the world from a studio apartment forever, Maya." A few uncomfortable laughs rippled through the room. They were waiting for my response, waiting for me to laugh it off, make a self-deprecating joke, deflect, waiting for me to shrink. I set my fork down carefully. The sound of metal on china was louder than it should have been. "I am doing something that matters," I said, voice steady. "I just stopped performing it for people who wouldn't notice anyway." Mom blinked, confused. "What's that supposed to mean?" she asked. Miranda leaned forward slightly, interested now. Jason's smirk faltered. "I started a consulting firm 18 months ago," I said. 3 partners. We specialize in nonprofit strategy, fundraising, organizational development. We just signed a six-figure renewable contract with the Emerson Foundation to redesign their entire grants program. The table went silent. Really silent. Mom's mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. We're projected to hit $700,000 in revenue our first full year, I continued. I have equity. I'm a co-owner. And yes, I still work at the nonprofit. Part-time now. Because I believe in the mission. But I'm not struggling. If that's what you're asking. Jason's face had gone carefully blank. That's great, Maya, he said, voice tight. But starting a business is risky. How long can that really last? I looked at him directly for the first time in years. Longer than however long you stay at your current firm, I said. Isn't this your fourth one in 6 years? His jaw clenched. Mom found her voice. Why didn't you tell us? She demanded. Why would you hide something like that from your family? Because you never asked, I said simply. My degree was a text message. My promotion 4 years ago lasted 30 seconds before you changed the subject to Jason's condo, so I stopped offering my life up for your approval. Dad shifted uncomfortably. That's not fair, Maya. We've always supported you. I shook my head slowly. No, I said. You've always supported Jason. There's a difference. I looked at Mom, then Dad. I heard you at the engagement party. In Dad's office. Jason needed $70,000 for the wedding. You're pulling from retirement again. Mom's face went pale. You were eavesdropping? She asked, voice sharp. I was getting ice, I said. And I wasn't trying to hear. But I did. Just like I heard it when I was 18 and you told me we couldn't afford summer camp. Just like I heard it every time Jason needed something and you made it work. And every time I needed something, and suddenly money was tight. Jason leaned forward, eyes narrowed. So what? You think you're better than me now? He said quietly. I think I stopped playing a game where the rules were rigged, I said. That's all. I pushed my chair back. The legs scraped against hardwood, loud in the silence. I picked up my bag from the floor. Mom stood up quickly. Where are you going? She demanded. Home, I said. And for the first time in my life, I didn't leave ashamed. I left free. Aunt Diane caught me at the door. She hugged me hard, whispered in my ear. I'm so proud of you. Always have been. Then she let me go, and I walked out into the cold November air. The weeks after Thanksgiving were strange. The family group chat went quiet. No photos of wedding planning. No updates about Jason's cases. Just occasional memes and silence. Aunt Diane texted me daily. They're all talking about you, she wrote. The way you just laid it out there. So calm. They didn't know what hit them. I smiled at my phone. Good, I wrote back. Mom called 2 weeks later. I let it go to voicemail. She called again, and again. Finally, I answered. Her voice was tight. You embarrassed your brother, she said, in front of his fiancé's family. In front of everyone? I didn't say anything. The silence stretched. Then her tone changed slightly. We're still family, Maya. That has to mean something. It does, I said. It means I have a responsibility to protect myself from people who hurt me, even if they're family. She made a frustrated sound. I didn't hurt you. I just pointed out that Jason has accomplished more. He's a partner. He's getting married. Those are real milestones. And what I've built isn't? I asked. She didn't answer right away. That's different, she finally said. What you're doing is admirable, but it's not stable. It's not secure like Jason's career. I could have argued. I could have listed my clients, my revenue, my projections, but I didn't. Because she wasn't going to hear it. She'd already decided what success looked like, and it was wrapped in a suit and worked at a law firm. I'm not having this conversation anymore, I said. When you're ready to actually listen, you know where to find me. She tried a different approach. If you need help, she said, voice softening. If the business struggles, we can talk. I laughed, short and sharp. I don't need help, Mom. That's what you still don't understand. I'm doing better than fine. I've been doing better than fine for years. You just never asked. I hung up before she could respond. 2 months later, Aunt Diane called me. You should know, she said carefully. Jason and Miranda postponed the wedding. Money issues. Miranda's upset. Your mom's panicking because they can't get deposits back. I felt something complicated move through me. Not quite sympathy. Not quite satisfaction. Just a strange, distant sadness. That's too bad, I said, and meant it. I hoped he figured it out. But when Mom called me the next day, I knew what was coming. The ask. The reason she'd been softening her tone. Maya, she said, I know things have been tense, but your brother needs help. Just a loan. Maybe 20,000. To cover what we can't refund. You have your business now. Surely you can spare it. I sat on my apartment balcony, looking out at the Portland skyline. Rain was starting to fall, light and steady. No, I said. Mom went quiet. What? She asked. I said no, I repeated. That's not my responsibility. But he's your brother, she said, voice rising. He'd help you if you needed it. Would he? I asked. Because I needed help my entire childhood. And nobody showed up. I needed help at 18, at 22, at 25. I never got it. I figured it out alone. Jason can do the same. You're being cruel, she said. I'm being clear, I said. I'm not fixing choices I didn't make. I'm not funding a wedding that's not mine. I'm not playing this game anymore. She tried guilt, then anger, then bargaining. I listened to all of it with a strange calm I'd never felt before. When she finished, I said quietly, I love you, Mom, but I don't trust you with my money, my time, or my heart anymore. You taught me that. When she crossed the line again 2 weeks later, another ask, another guilt trip, I muted her number. When Jason called to yell at me about family loyalty, I blocked him. That wasn't punishment, that was oxygen. I poured everything into work. Catalyst Collective grew faster than we'd projected. We hired 2 more consultants. We moved into an actual office space. I started speaking at conferences about sustainable nonprofit funding models. I wrote articles that got published in industry journals. I met people who saw me, really saw me. For the first time in my life, I started volunteering at a women's shelter, teaching financial literacy workshops, budgeting, saving, escape planning, skills I'd learned by necessity, women who were tired of being told they weren't enough. Some nights, I missed the family I wanted, the one where my achievements mattered, where my mom showed up to my art gallery opening, where my name was said with pride instead of disappointment. Then I look around my apartment, at the life I built with my own hands, at the business I co-own, at the women I've helped, at the peace I finally feel. And I remember something important. I didn't win their approval. I reclaimed my life. And that's worth more than any toast at any table. If any part of this felt familiar, like and share. Subscribe to Scarlett Johansson for more stories about quiet strength. More stories are coming.